Hey, it's Letitia, aka LR Star, your resident mystery and suspense author, and I've got a little reading to do for you. Thanks for stopping by. Hit the subscribe button if you like it. I'm going to read The Place That Sleeps, one of my short romantic suspense stories, heavy on the mystery, heavy on the suspense. And this is the story of Piper and Jack and the Killer. And it's a story told in Australian English and set in a coastal town in Australia. It's a real place, and the house that it's centered around is also real. Oddly enough, the title of the book is also what the natives call the region. It's named The Place That Sleeps. And ironically, it's not very sleepy. There's a lot of people here. Anyway, I digress. And the backstory is that I was walking the beach one day and talking with one of the locals, and she mentioned that the owners of this beach house changed hands every 2 years. I was like, wow, every 2 years. And she was saying it's super expensive. So, it's one of those places where you get your friends together and, you stay there for a week, you have a good time, and then, you go back to your own house and go about your business. But for me, I was like, so naturally, I think that people are being murdered. No, not really. Just the earmark of a fantabulous story in the making. So grab your brew, settle in, and buckle up for the prologue told from the killer's perspective and chapter 1 told from Piper's perspective. Let's go. The Place That Sleeps. The prologue. Miss Mary Mac, all dressed in black, with silver buttons all down her back. She asked her mother. My sister sang that stupid rhyme. I used to watch her as the silken waves of the roaring sea crashed on the shoreline, bruising the tawny rocks of Umina Beach. I could still hear her clapping her hands together with her friend Polly like a horse's hooves. I liked to watch. Was fun. She left like Mummy. I watched as she struggled in her submersion, the air bubbles escaping to the surface, her white nightdress floating up around her neck, making her resemble an octopus. She was so pretty, her sandy blonde hair floating like a carousel around her. She reminded me of the others. Oh, how they thrashed when I closed my greedy fingers around their necks. Other times, they knew death was calling and gave up the fight quietly. My longest battle was 2.5 minutes. My adrenaline ran high with that one. I liked it ever so much. I found myself a little out of breath, but I managed. She'd clawed at me underwater. Must have been a water baby. She could hold her breath quite well. I didn't know that part until we were further out in the middle of the sea. She appeared to be fragile, petite in size, but she had a strength that made me think she might be a seal. I found out she wasn't after 2 minutes. Oh well. If I was feeling strong, I would pick more of a challenge. On that day, I wasn't looking for one. I wanted to freshen my skills is all. I thought about improving my stamina after that. That was 2 summers ago, and now I was keen again to see another underwater symphony. I wanted to feel the resistance of the water as I led my victim to the watery gates of Atlantis. That's the place they went. Had to be. That's what the monster told me anyway. Same place my mother lives now. I wanted to see their glorious, lifeless limbs float to the surface as their lips turned a magnificent shade of blue. Sometimes I wanted to revive them, if only to watch them slip into the watery abyss once again. I wouldn't let them stay at the surface, of course. That would be stupid, and I would get caught. Duh! I would tie the weighted rock to the bottom of their feet and drive the boat further to the shark breeding ground of Long Island. I only did it when they were feeding. Easy disposal. I was doing the natural world a favour. Couldn't be mad at me. I learned from the best. The one who taught me so well. He's the greedy monster that took our mother too. Except her body of water was much smaller than the giant turquoise pool I swam in all the time. Chapter 1. Piper. That smug prick got the story before me. He'd been sucking up Callister's ass again. Working at the Sydney Wire was a complete batshit nightmare for me now. Never used to be like this. Every day I dreaded going into work because the male journos were a pack of irreverent beasts. But one made me want to drive heave on the regular. Clayton Moore. He thought he was God's gift to just about everything. Who has a last name like Moll anyway? His mouth was too big for his face, and if his snout had been any longer, I would dare say Pinocchio would come ask for his nose back. His cough was terrible as well and overgelled. He obviously had the wrong product because the white flakes from it would crust up on his shoulders, cause for a smug grin to lift on my lips. "What are you grinning at, Longley?" he would say. I would give him my best fuck you smile and glance at his shoulders where the sprinkles of snowflakes landed. He would scatter to the bathroom and remove them, because the next time I saw him the flakes would be gone. Small victories were the only ones I had to hold on to at the paper. The larger ones, well, they went to the toss bags. I was rubbing my throbbing temple and sitting in the middle of a pile of notes. Not unusual for me. That story he took from me was one of the biggest investigative pieces the Sydney Wire would have, and now it was in his greedy mitts. A large fraud case focused on Sydney City. Two Swift Conman coaxed 25 investors out of their panties to the tune of $10 million. Fuck, I wanted that story. I put in so much legwork. I'd spoken to the girlfriends and the wives and built a great expose piece on the background of the men. I wanted to explore the human angle, and to appeal to the public so they could understand what these heathens were really like. I'd spoken to 3 of the investors and all their stories were the same. They were so smooth, Piper. Smoke and mirrors with all their fancy presentations took us blokes for a ride. We met their families and all. Their websites were on point. We met their colleagues. Built a rapport, Spent a small amount of time with them and made a little money back. Now I'm jacked out of my life savings and in the poorhouse. A finder's fee property scam. Now both conmen were on the run and possibly attempting to leave the country. Clayton didn't do anything different to me with the story. Except he claimed he had access to the girlfriend of one of the conmen and she'd given him an exclusive interview. His tongue rolled around in his cheeks as we stood being played off one another in McAllister's office. My arms were folded across my chest as he played the tape of the woman speaking. It was an awful relationship. Just awful. He basically forced me to be the receptionist. Clayton. How were you involved in the scam? What was your exact role? Woman. He made me set up all the meetings. He made me set up the bank transfers. I have all the names. I listened as McAllister, with his snow-white hair, played the conversation back on his computer through a USB stick. I was sceptical because Clayton had been busted 3 years ago making up a story. Shock horror. No surprises there, to be brutally honest. He'd gotten a slap on the wrist and a 1-week suspension to the sin bin of columnist work as punishment. Should have been let go. I was of the ilk that journalists needed to cite their sources to remain credible. The Sydney Wire wasn't a gossip blog. I hope your sources is credible. You want to have integrity. I think it's ironic that you're working on a fraud case. I muttered with disdain. I cocked an eyebrow at him as I let the stab set in. His glib reaction let me know he could care less. His hands were in his pockets as he rocked back and forth on his heels. I looked down and he was scratching his dick. Probably for fleas. He'd scoffed as his long floppy black hair hung into his eyes and he'd scraped it back from his pale face. Now, no need to get snarky, Longley. We all know what you're like when you haven't had your coffee. Should go to the spa with your girlfriends. And get your nails done. Relax a little bit. I hear there's an opening for a beauty and wellness writer. Should look into that. That dimply smirk is one I wanted to slap clean off his face. McAllister took over the paper that his father started in the 1960s. He ignored our mini sparring matches that often unfolded in his office. He was a wiry, up-on-your-toes type of man, full of zest for life and a love for digging into true life stories. He was fit and in his early 60s, perfectly capable of running a great newspaper. His blue eyes were still bright as buttons. In recent years, with the turn of the digital age and the demand for sensationalist stories, I'd felt the Sydney Wire had sold out a little bit. We'd lost our edge. Kudos to McAllister for being able to sustain a privately owned paper, but I could tell in the last 2 years that the strain of upholding it was wearing him down. The crinkles around his eyes now looked like wraparound verandas, and he was staying later and later at the office. You've got the story, Mole, with a twist. I want you to work with Longley on it. She has the backstory to make this more compelling. But Clayton's long face turned beetroot red, and I wanted to punch the air. Wasn't a complete loss, but I knew that Clayton would find a way to squeeze my information out of the story, or worse yet, would take credit for it. McAllister held up 2 fingers in a stop motion. It's final. I want your final copy in my inbox by Friday, so I can get it to the editors for the Monday morning digital edition. I want to include the tape as well. As Longley mentioned, must be a credible source, he said in a gruff voice. 100%. I'm not in the business of putting out shit stories, he replied defiantly. I rolled my eyes so hard I think they almost rolled out of their sockets. McAllister turned to me. Longley? Same to you. Final proofs for the story by Friday. The editorial team will obviously trim the fat, but I want you in here working to the deadline. Got it, I responded with a tight smile. So there I was on a relatively sunny Monday morning in Banger. Luckily, I couldn't complain about the view. I had a straight line look out to Darling Harbour and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I let my eyes settle on the ferry, making its daily commute with the jet stream of whitewash over to Manly Beach. Susie, who worked in classifieds, was my fantastic work wife. She came over to my desk with her pencil lodged in her hair and chewing gum. She wore her large circular black frames, and her wild, messy golden hair was up in a loose bird's nest of a bun. She was quite cute in a quirky way. You're looking glum. Go that well, did it? Susie, what the fuck? That snout-nosed trout did it again. Snatched the bloody story from right under my nose. Don't worry about that. I have even better news that will make you happy. My husband is away for the next 5 days and I want to go away. Shall we? I know you have holidays coming up next week. I've invited myself to join you wherever we are going, she proclaimed in a bossy tone. Her pushiness made me laugh. She was a big softy at heart. Want to get that off your chest, didn't you? She pursed her cute lips together. Yes, before you had a chance to change your mind. Let's go and have some sun. It's summer and we need some relief from this hellhole. She frowned as she shook her head. How's your day going? I hope it's better than mine, I asked as I pulled my scrappy notes together. She rolled her eyes and slumped her slender shoulders over. No, it's not. I just had some fucker ring and asked to put his blowjob service in the classifieds. I mean, where did these people get off? I shrugged my shoulders, flicking my dark hair back over it. Well, that's what he was trying to tell you. I giggled. It was endless lives with Susie. Every day some ghastly person either pranked her or had something vile to say to her on the phone. Those services are needed. Do we have a service for women? I fanned my face for effect. I broke Susie out of her wretchedness as she giggled and trout-faced, walking past, smirked. I see you're hardly working on my piece. I'm going to need to meet with you to go over what you have. Obviously, we're going to have to trim some of what you've written. It's a little too tangled if you ask me. Simplify. I fake smiled at Clayton. I've already sent through some of the pages to you. Take a look when you get a chance. Trim some of mine? Was he fucking serious? He was really gloating now, and smiling, showing all his piranha teeth to both me and Susie. How are you, Susie? Looking a little flustered there. Classified giving you much trouble? I faced out the window trying to use the sea to calm me. I didn't want to look at him at all. Susie's face went bright red. Oh, piss off quick, Clayton. Haven't you got some dandruff to clear up? Now it was Clayton's turn for his face to glow red as I made a funny giggly noise in my throat. I don't have dandruff. It was the gel, he said with quiet indignance, walking away. I'll set up that meeting, Piper. He did a little backhanded wave, which thoroughly annoyed me. Susie puffed out her cheeks and signalled the middle finger repeatedly as he left. That guy has a pole up his ass. No flat asses allowed. He should be automatically fired. A few of our colleagues working in their cubicles looked up in curiosity. Susie always caused a stir in our department, and most at the paper thought she was completely bonkers. Not me. I happened to think she was highly intelligent and belonged in the lifestyle department. The only problem with that department is the women in there were a pack of catty bitches. They needed to be rerouted to the gossip columns. I shared a heinous giggle with Susie. Sounds like a great idea. To go away. Let me come up with some ideas and get back to you. Good. Stay sane. Same to you. Ugh, God, I'll try. Might be hard in this place, she groaned with a dose of contempt. I wanted a reprieve from the devastation of not winning the story, so I decided to look up Google Maps and find a place to holiday. Blue Mountains. Nah, too cold. Sapphire Beach. Nah, too far. Central Coast. Less than a couple of hours away. That could work. Umina Beach. I let my mouse hover over the location. A little more seclusion than some of the other main beaches. I scrolled through accommodation options and found a large beach house that sat back from the sand dunes separated by bitumen path. Something about the house made me gravitate towards it. Nothing too special about it really. It was a large weatherboard house and it looked like it'd been around a bit. On the left was a holiday caravan park and a small creek bed channel. Reminded me of the spearfishing I used to do with my grandfather. I checked out the ad. Discounted rate. Ideal for group of holiday goers who want to enjoy a slower pace of life. A dream stay with a 4-bedroom house right on the beach. Don't miss out. Normally $2,000 a night. Now $1,500 a night. I sat back in my chair. 4 girlfriends that wanted a luxury stay split 4 ways. That wouldn't be so bad. $375 a night. Fuck it, I deserve it. I muttered and sent an email to my best girlfriends. They were all at work in offices making decent livings. This little fun trip would add some relaxation to our stressful lives. Hopefully. I looked closer at the ad. Jonathan McMaster was the owner, with a mobile number provided. I could visit my grandfather at the same time. He lived at Greenpoint in a little village set up, and I loved going to see him there. He was quite the character, and had a nice collection of spears, fishing baskets, and other bits and pieces from the old ways. I rested my head softly on my hand as I reminisced. We used to spearfish around near the rocks of Pearl Beach when I was a young girl, and those memories always brought a smile to my face, no matter what kind of day I was having. We were wild and free back then. I was a skinny little thing, all legs and arms with long flowing hair. a real tomboy type. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a good idea. I shot off the email, and by the end of the day I got 2 resounding yeses to my offer and 2 declining. Not too bad given the short notice. We would be holidaying from next Wednesday to Sunday. That's what we could all afford as working Sydney women. It would have to do for now until some rich man swept me off my feet and took me on monthly trips to Europe. Yep, that's what I decided was going to happen to my life. Might have been a touch on the delusional side, but I would work with it. The salty breeze whipped my dark hair across my face as I wiggled my toes in the golden sand on Wednesday morning. Now I could breathe. The fraud story was turned in on Monday night, and Clayton the hack, to my surprise, did keep most of my story. Maybe he was starting to have a conscience about his lack of a writing ability. I was standing out front of the beach house, looking out at the clear, cold blue sky with the horizon line separating the emerald green waters. Glistening foamy white froth collapsed at the water's edge as starbeams danced on its watery back. Sailboats littered the foreground, sliding past the green, lush, rocky islands on either side of the sea. Surfers in their wetsuits resembling seals were packed in tight, close to the curve of the rock face on the left, which wrapped all the way around to Pearl Beach. I counted 10. Amazed me how all this sea existed and they congregated in the same spot. The girls were inside unpacking and making themselves comfortable. We were having a taco and wine night, so we planned to go out later and get supplies for the night's fun. I felt differently to them. I wanted to get straight into the water. I'd missed the cool, salty taste of the ocean on my lips. I planned to swim and frolic for the day and not do much else. The waves weren't dumpers, but they had some weight in them. I knew how to duck under waves, which is a key skill that every kid should be taught in Australian waters. I rated myself a strong swimmer after all. I had native blood running through my veins, so if I couldn't swim, it would be a disgrace to my heritage. My grandfather would practically disown me. I had to settle for pool laps because I resided in Redfern, and water was nowhere to be found in that joint. It was a stark contrast to the bustling shops, cafes and hipster art scene that occupied the suburb these days. One of the surfers that I imagined the sharks to deem as seals emerged from the water, causing me to double take. Strong face, high cheekbones, a nice shaped nose, piercing eyes, broad chest, check, guns on display, check, over 6 foot tall, check, the hand through his short dark hair, check, board shorts dripping wet, nice well cut surfer legs and a short board, swoon alert. The sight made me breathe in sharply. His presence was foreboding, and there was something hard to place about him. The breeze moved through my hair in front of my face as I swept it away quickly again. I didn't want to miss the show. I circled my toe around in the sand as he came closer, trying to redirect my nervousness. I spotted a large beach towel not far from me as the gap between us closed. I shyly looked up at him, where he was waiting for me with a cheeky dimpled smile. "G'day, how's it going? Heading in for a swim or just looking?" He grinned cheekily. "I'm up from Sydney, I'm just checking out the surf," I replied as I discreetly scanned his body. I heard my friends whistling from the porch, and he grinned as he looked up and waved to them. All that was left was a sparkle to light up his teeth, and the man of perfection would be complete. I closed my eyes in embarrassment, crossing my arms across my chest, crumpling up my button nose. Sorry about my friends, slightly obnoxious creeps." He stuck his board down in the sand and chuckled at what I said. "You're funny. Hope to see you out swimming later. I'm Jack, by the way." He extended his hand and I took it. His fingers were slightly damp. but I still felt the warm tingle travelling up my arm from his touch. I'm going to be swimming a little later, just settling in. I'm Piper. Nice to meet you, Piper. Have a great day. Oh, I will now.